This is Killswitch, and I am interviewing James Gamble from GameAweek.com. You know him as a guy who puts out a game pretty much every week and sometimes, 2 or 3 days. Uh, James, if you could introduce yourself to the people.
Hi, I'm JayenKai, and that's pretty much what I do. I write games every week, do what I can, and try and keep it interesting.
All right, James, what I like to do when I start these interviews is ask, what were some of your favorite games when you were growing up?
Ooh, probably games like Manic Miner and Jet Set Willy. Classic little retro platform games that did exactly what they needed to do. Simple collections and things like that. Kept it simple and kept the gameplay going.
Were these games that may have influenced what you do now?
Oh, most definitely, yeah. Especially with the simple little retro graphics.
All right, well, speaking of retro, you have a character by the name of Plat Dude. Where did he come from?
He's based on the old Amstrad computer basic version. There was a little character within the built-in graphics that looked a little like Plat Dude. Mine's a bit more, what can I say, simplified. Yeah.
Alright, so that was the origin of Plat Dude? It wasn't something before that, or an idea that you had?
No, it was just, as I made a platform game, I needed a little character to go with it, and that little guy seemed to fit the bill. So I picked him up, added a bit of colour to him, and made his head half as wide as it was before.
Alright, and I know you've used Plat Dude more than once. Obviously, you've been doing this for a while.
I have.
I saw your website maybe, I'd say 3 years ago. At
Yeah.
that time, I was like, okay, this guy's crazy if he's been doing it for that long.
Yep.
How long have you been doing that site?
Oh, a game a week started around about 2009, I think. But before that, I've been making games fairly rapidly for a long time. I'd say about 2000. It's been a long time.
That must be one big catalog of games.
I think it's up to about 300 now, I think.
Well, you're already at 3% of the Ouya market. Might as well make it 4 or 5 and just keep going.
Why not?
What is your favorite part about developing for Ouya?
Oh, I'd say probably the controller more than anything. Once you get your hands on proper buttons instead of having to work with touch screens all the time, it makes a big difference in the gameplay. Especially with the analog control sticks as well. Compare that to having to make a strange little circular pad on the touch screen. It's a big difference.
Do you think you'll be going back to touch screens or sticking with Ouya or back and forth? What do you think your plans will be?
At the minute, I'm trying to make games that work on both things at the same time. Obviously, it's much easier with a controller, but with the touchscreen, you have to think outside the box and try and do different things to make sure that the gameplay still works. It's hard, but I'm trying to keep everything working together.
Out of curiosity, which do you find to be, I don't want to say easier because, as you know, programming isn't the easiest thing to pick up, but which do you find to be, let's say, shorter in terms of time? Either the controller or iOS and Android.
I would say the control is more immediate, but then you have little intricacies with the controller, like having to time the buttons just right and things like that. Whereas with a touchscreen, a simple swipe can do all sorts of different things. It's not easier, it's just different.
Alright, no, well, we have a lot of, as you know, you're part of the Ouya forum, which
Yep.
is the oddest forum around, but We have guys who are trying to get into the game development field, and some
Yeah.
of them, they use Unity like I do. You have
Mhm.
Fusion, you have Blitz, you have so many others. Tell us about the engine that you're using and how do you think it differs from some of the others?
Well, I'm writing games using monkeyx.com. It's like a simplified version of C++ or Java or things like that. It's created in the style of old basic languages. It allows you to write a game with just a simple block of text, as opposed to clicking on menus and items and things like that. Um, it's more simplistic for me, but I think it would be heavily complex for an amateur developer who's just learning the ropes. That type of point and click language is much better suited for a new new coder developer.
Well, since you mentioned BASIC, which we know goes
Yeah,
back decades, um,
it does.
if someone knew BASIC, would you think that they would be able to use the engine that you're using?
They probably would do, yeah. If you're comfortable with an old style language, Monkey is a good language to pick up. It allows you to write a game once and then run it on lots of different devices, like the Ouya.
And just back to the language thing, if someone knew, let's say, Pascal, for example, which isn't that much different from BASIC, different syntax, do you think they would also be able to pick up, or do you think they should go somewhere else?
Oh, I think a lot of languages nowadays are all starting to blend together. So C++ and Java, even though there are big differences between the two languages, they are somewhat similar. Um, we've kind of all gotten together and started using the same sets of functions and languages and words and things just to keep all the languages more or less similar.
And, well, of course you also have C Sharp, which really doesn't get mentioned, but it
Yeah,
is used for Unity, Unreal, and a few others, along with
it is, yeah.
Java. Just like Java's on
hmm
both in their, let's say, bastardized form. Because, Unity script, Unreal script, and all that.
Yeah.
Um,
Well, even still, they all carry the same kind of base coding style. So you tend to be able to jump from one to the other. If you know the groundwork of one language, you can more or less use any language that's available.
um, I'd say that's somewhat true. Just like for me, if I was to change from C Sharp to C++, there
Yeah.
is a bit of a barrier there. Because I have looked at it.
It's it's a case of learning what all the different words, the different keywords for each language is. For example, with one you might be used to a for next loop, whereas with the other one it would require a do loop. You just have to pick up the differences between the languages, and you can generally get over the hurdles.
So, out of all, well, for guys like us who were in the 80s, unfortunately, and the 90s and all that, there
Yeah,
are
still going.
there are other ways in besides just picking up Unity or Unreal.
Yeah, there's plenty of ways to get into programming and writing again. It's just taking that first step. That's usually the hardest part.
And with the Ouya, it gives people that opportunity, as you see on Ouya Forum and other places. People
Yeah,
want to get back into it.
yeah, and being able to plug it into your TV and play your games on a console, that's a big step.
Um, so since you have the catalog, I mean, how many games could you possibly have? I would, because I know, let's say, what, 6 years. You said 2009. So say 5 to 6 years, you're talking 250 games. Plus whatever
There's
extra.
quite a few, yeah. Yeah. Well, you just keep on going.
And
If a random idea pops into your head, jot it down, get it working, do what you can as quickly as you can, and hopefully something comes of it.
what got you started on the journey? Because a game a week isn't something you usually hear someone planning to do. You know, you don't pick up an engine and say, I'm going to do a game a week. So,
Not usually, no. It just sort of happened. I just found myself making games within a short period of time, and after a while it became weekly. There was no plan, it just happened.
yeah, I know, because even this week, I'm trying to think of the name of the person. There was an article posted, I'll call it a blog, not an article, where
Yeah, on
someone should...
Gamer Sutra.
Yes, that was it. Where you should start out doing a game a week, which I can
Yeah.
see the advantages. You could do, like, practice one thing this week, something else the next, and in the end,
Yeah.
you can put it all together.
Yeah. It's a good way to come up with ideas and learn little bits and pieces as you go. I'm not sure if I would suggest it as a starting point, but definitely if you need to learn a few new tricks and ways to get around problems, then a game a week is a good way to do it.
See, talking to you, what I was thinking was maybe, let's say May, June, somewhere in there, maybe we do something on the forum where we encourage people who want to learn to actually start doing a game a week. There'll be, you know, whatever simple creations. Doesn't have to be a competition, but just to get them going.
Yeah, that sounds like a good idea. Something to spur on the ideas and things like that.
Well, if the members of the forum haven't chased you away by then, would you be willing to look on and help people out?
Sounds like something good, yeah?
All right. I will most likely run the suggestion up the flagpole and see what happens, but it's something that can help people get going because, as you know, the Ouya says you can be a developer, and they claim 33,000 developers are out there, so you know, might as well get 5 or 10 of them going.
Why not?
Well, since we're talking about your games that I mean, I just, the number just, it has to be like, what, 500 or something? Maybe even more than that?
If I dug everything out, there would probably be about 500, yeah. The problem is, when you've got so many games, you lose some along the way. I can think of at least 5 or 10 off the top of my head that aren't in my website at all, that I know I've lost through hard drive failures and things like that. But that thing, it happens. You just have to deal with it. Move on. There's another 100 games to make.
Well, and I'm sure you'll make 100 of them. Do you plan to port any of your older titles?
I don't plan anything. Whatever happens each week to week, that's what happens.
Okay, it's an interesting way of looking at it. I can't even bounce another question off you from that. So,
Sorry.
What is the shortest time it's taken you to make a game?
From a couple of hours up to, I don't know, like a month. I can think of one that took me 2 months to make. It was a long, long struggle to be Neon Plat Adventures. It was a big game, and it took a long, long time. But I think it was worth it. Compare that to something like Microbes, which took about an hour to get done and was much more popular. you never can tell with these things. It's just a case of bundling what you can together and seeing how well it works.
That's true. Speaking of popular, I think you know where I'm going with this one.
Um,
You know, it's about a bird.
a bird? I can't imagine what you mean. Would
I
it be a flapping bird of some sort?
It might flap. Um, it came out of nowhere. I was
It did.
I was reading articles. I'm sitting there like, how is anyone playing this thing? And then it's 2 articles, and it's 10, then it's 20, and it just kept going.
It snowballed.
Exactly, a snowball
Yeah.
effect. And I'm sitting there looking at your game, Spike Dislike. Yes, that is a blatant plug. Go get it. And it's a better game, but this flapping bird is getting this guy 50,000 a day.
Yep.
And I know you can market. I look at Twitter. Half of my feed is you or your friends, so I know you're out there.
Oh, yeah.
How do you think we can get you to 50,000 a day?
I think it's sheer luck. That's the thing with the mobile market, is either your game gets noticed or it doesn't. It's as simple as that, I think.
Well, Spike Dislike, yes, I am plugging the game again. Go check it out. He is not paying me for this. Just letting you know.
This week's game will be Spike Dislike related, in fact.
Oh.
I've just put a trailer on YouTube about 10 minutes ago. It's called Spiky Tower. It's kind of the same idea, but it goes upwards instead of right.
Well, I'd love to see something go any other direction right now. I mean, obviously when the king dies, many people try to take its spot. But wow, the amount of clones is ridiculous.
It's gone insane, yeah.
I mean, it's fine if people want to do that. I can't knock them for that, but at least try to make it different. Like,
Yeah.
your game was before Flappy Bird, so they can't really say anything about that.
It's been around since 2010, I think. Yeah.
Wow. I didn't know it was that long. Okay.
It came from an advent calendar I was making. I made an advent calendar over December 2010, and every day of the month I added a new game to a little package, and Spike Dislike was one of them. That's all it was, a stupid little game. It blew up from there.
And you said you were doing it daily. Does that mean you actually have months where you may have a game a day?
For a little while I did do that, yeah. It was intense. But yeah, it was worth it, just to try out little tiny ideas and see which worked.
Yeah, because I saw one of your recent ones, Final Warrior.
Yeah.
Why am I drawing a blank on his name right now? Otaku. Yeah.
Yeah.
He did the video. I mean, the game was... I don't know how to describe the game, but just watching him play was the funniest thing ever.
It was. I'm glad that he played it, and I'm glad that he picked up on the game the way that I intended it to be. Just to that moment where he goes, "Oh, I can shoot." I think that was just perfect.
Well, when we're done with the interview, I will be linking people to that video so they can take a look. I mean, the game is short, but
It's tiny.
it's watching him is what makes that video.
I tried my best to make sure that it would all happen in just the right order, and I'm glad that he picked up on it.
How long did it take you to make the game?
Not long at all. I think it shows in how big the game is. It took about an hour or two at the most.
Wow.
I spent most of the next day trying to add all the Twitter names into the game. That was mostly spent clicking on the website page at a time, copying and pasting a whole bunch of names.
See, now you said it was an hour or two. Now imagine if we had even 10 people who could take the time out to at least do that, and then you can
Yeah,
build upon it from there.
you can. As long as you've got a starting point, you can just keep adding to games, and that's the fun of games. The freeform nature of it all. You just keep building until you find an end point.
Hmm. Um, well, speaking of endpoints, do you like put your projects down and come back to it, or do you just keep going?
Occasionally, I'll go back and revisit a game, but usually, if I feel that a game could be bigger, I tend to redo it from the beginning again. Mostly because if you redo something, you tend to be able to do it a little bit better the second time, or the
Hmm.
third time, or the 50th time.
You know, I feel the same way. I just hate to restart.
Yeah. I think with a game a week, because they're smaller games, it's easier to redo them.
Well, that's true. Yeah, thinking on a much smaller scale, that would be true.
Yeah.
Um,
Whereas if you do something huge, revisiting the whole thing, it could be painful.
yeah, 'cause that reminds me of, I can't think of his name. He did the game 100 Rogues, and he recoded the whole thing for Ouya, which
Yeah.
I would not have done.
No.
That's that's a lot of work.
Redoing a project that big, it's a struggle, I think. Um, I would usually scrap the whole thing, redo something in the same style, but try and come up with something new and interesting along the way.
Yeah, or find somebody who could do the porting work for you because
Yeah,
that's crazy. Because,
it is. Yeah,
like, for me, using Unity, it's maybe a week, maybe two if there's some little intricate part, but he redid the whole thing.
yeah. It's a lot of work to redo something like
Yeah, I couldn't believe it when I read that.
that.
It said post-mortem. I was expecting Tombstone, his name on it, because that was bad. But
Yep,
I mean, you do what you love, you'll do things like that, but wow.
yep.
That's why your game a week to me was an interesting concept because you won't run into something like that, but you can also along the way learn different things, come back to it, change it, maybe even add to it.
Yeah. Um, Sometimes you go back and you look at something and you realise there's something obviously missing from that game, and just something that you hadn't thought of at the time. And being able to add one little piece might change the entire game completely.
Well, well, now that you're pretty much focused on the game a week, do you see yourself doing something like taking a month to do bigger game, whatever that would be?
Yeah, something like Spike Dislike. Again, going back to that again. Um, Spike Dislike started as a little game, but it grew and grew and grew. With Spike Dislike 2, I set myself a month to recreate the whole game and add new elements to it. But then it only took me a week,
Well,
which I wasn't expecting at all. I managed to cram the entire thing down within a week
hmm,
and then released it, and that was it.
um, okay, yeah, because man, I don't know. The whole week thing kind of boggles the mind thinking how someone could do it. I mean, like for me, it might be possible for me because even now I switch from game to game. I
Yeah,
have I have the framework of 5 or 6 games done, but I'm going back to each one to touch up something because I can't
Yeah.
stay on it for, 2 weeks at a time. So I'm kind of doing what you do, just it's a bigger scale.
It's juggling it all together.
Yeah, just and trying to keep from going insane looking at the same thing.
Yeah, I know what you mean. I think if I did do a larger project like that, I couldn't concentrate on it for that long. A game a week taught me some bad habits.
That's true if you're doing it for that long. Um, hmm. Well, where do you... Okay, well, let's just go with years since you're doing a game a week. Where do you see yourself at the end of this year? Do you think you will continue doing a game a week? Will it speed up, slow down, or are you just going to keep going?
I have no idea. Like I said, nothing's planned. It all just happens as it happens. Um, I'd like to take a month off, maybe in April, and do a larger project, maybe a JayenKai Plat or something like that. But generally, whatever happens week to week, I have no plan.
All right, fair enough. Well, I I mean, you've pretty much answered all the questions that I have, all the questions that the members of the forum had for you. Um, I guess this is a time where I let you just plug away at however many games you're going to plug right now.
That's the thing with a game a week is I can't think of like a best game to plug. We'll go back to Spike Dislike again because that's the popular one. But Space Popcorn's been popular this past few months. I can't think. Blast Tracks. Blast Tracks was fun. It didn't do very well, but it was fun. I'm not sure.
Okay,
I have too long a list to plug anything.
fair enough. Well, I guess what we can do, direct people to your site and they can look it over.
Yeah.
That is agameaweek.com. It's spelled just like that, all one word, .com. You can check out Spike Dislike.
Yep.
There's no birds in the game. Um, you,
There's a bee that acts a bit like a bird.
oh man, no birds. Just no birds. We have, Space Popcorn. I remember seeing it. It's like asteroids in reverse.
Yeah.
I actually haven't been able to try anything out because my TV's down right now. But
Oh.
as soon as it's back up, I will be checking out some of your games, and of course, I will plug some of them. Spike Dislike.
Yep.
So, I mean, well, what words do you have for someone trying to get into programming? Because that's the whole thing with this series. What I'd like to do when it comes to the programmers, at least give people different views on programming. Like last interview was Meltdown, which is a big game which he's planning many expansions. And then you're a game a week. You plan many games. So, what? Well, you don't plan, but the games are coming. So,
Yep.
what words of wisdom could you leave the people with?
Something I've learnt from a game a week is that even a bad idea can turn out to be a good game. Just try things out and don't be worried that something might not be unpopular or something like that. You can never tell what's going to be good. Keep trying.
That's true if you listen to the words of Dong, who made Flappy Bird. I can't stand that game. But, I mean, it's a nice little time waster. He didn't expect all that fame from that game.
No.
So you never know. You could make something, think it's trash, and it might be popular with everyone else.
You never know.
Well, unfortunately, there's the other side of the coin where it might not be, but keep trying, right?
Absolutely. Just throw everything into the fire and something will catch.
That's very true. All right.
Until you get up to number 300 and then you realise it's not going anywhere.
All right. Let's not discourage anyone. But, if they were going at your pace, 300 would be 6 years. So hopefully by
Yeah.
that time they could figure something out.
I'm sure they would.
All right. Well, James, I want to thank you for the interview, and I'm sure the members of the forum do too.
Yeah, thank you everyone.
And that was James Gamble, agameaweek.com. Check out Spike Dislike, and many other games that he has available at the website. So, until next time, this is Killswitch. I now return you to whatever it is that you're doing.